You're listening to Stand Tall and Own It, the podcast for high-performing female leaders who are ready to make an impact by discovering the safety that comes from understanding their own value and exercising their own authority. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, and I'm here to tell you it is time to just truly be you, my strong friend. It's time to stand tall and own it. Hey there, welcome back to another episode of Stand Tall and Own It. I'm your host, Andrea Johnson, the Intentional Optimist, and I am so glad you're here. I have a very special guest to introduce you to today. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her, then I'll tell you why we're chatting. Leslee Owen is the co-founder and CEO of Movement Maker Web Design Agency, where she leads the marketing, groundbreaking strategies that align business growth with personal values for female CEOs. Right in my wheelhouse. I love that. Leslee garnered invaluable experience as the marketing leader for C12, which is the leading business advisory group for Christian CEOs and executives. This is also where she honed her skill for developing high-performing marketing strategies for top-tier leaders. This experience then equipped her with a unique insight into the challenges and goals of female CEOs, allowing her to craft marketing solutions that align with business growth. Now, she's a recognized consumer marketing expert for female millennials. She's a certified life and business coach, and she draws on all her expertise, including a specialized course in motherhood and work from Stanford University to help women thrive in both business and life. I just love her. And honestly, I had never really gone through her bio like this. So when you hear our conversation, you're going to love this. Okay. She has over 20 years of experience in television and digital media. She's produced globally broadcast commercials, lifestyle talk shows, and documentaries. She co-founded a support group in San Antonio named Babe Supports Babes. It's an 80-member community empowering aspiring female entrepreneurs to transform their dreams into successful startups. And she's been featured across all kinds of platforms, including being the first ambassador for the wildly popular Marco Polo app, which is how we met, quite frankly. We had a friend introduce us. Once she said, you know, you both do Marco Polo, you both do this, you both think about that. I really think you should meet. And it was just boom, from there on, that was all she wrote, pretty much. And as amazing as all of these things are about Leslee, that's really not why she's here today. I'm thinking I probably should have her on just to really talk about her business. Leslee is my client. And as we got to know each other, poloing back and forth, coaching each other, walking through our own deconstruction journeys, she heard me talking about my core values coaching alpha program. And when I explained it to her, she said, how much is it? And I told her, and she said, oh, sold, I'm in. It was like that fast. She was not only instrumental in helping me figure out how to make the coaching program valuable and viable, she's used it and the information she gleaned from it to its absolute greatest potential. That's why she's here today. I want you to hear first person the impact truly understanding and integrating your core values can make in your life. Let me introduce you to Leslee Owen. Hey, Leslee. I'm so happy you're here.
I am so happy that I'm here too.
we mostly polo. We don't always get to finish you like, hi in person.
Yes, live. We don't usually do live, but our polos are very candid, raw, and real. So we just need to expect the same here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I started to share this and then said, nope, I'm going to hit record. As I recorded the intro and read your bio, like you're my client, right? And yeah. I know you're my friend, right? You're almost like a little sister. And so there are things about you that I just didn't, I know you're like this badass businesswoman. I just didn't think about it. And as I was reading your bio, I'm like, holy cow. Woman, wow, all these things. And I'm like, it was already a privilege to coach you, but now I feel like it's even higher level privilege to coach you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, it means a lot coming from you, someone that I look up to in so many different ways that I feel like was dropped into my life in such a needed and honestly, strategic time. So that means a lot coming from you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks. And before we get into this mutually beneficial and love fest, whatever thing. I did share a little bit. I did share some of your bio, and because I want people to hear who you are, and at the very end, I want to make sure they know how to get in touch with you if for some reason they
Yes,
hear something that you say that they think, oh yeah, based on all of this discussion, I want to work with her. So we will share that stuff at the end. All of y'all listening, don't
perfect.
worry, and it'll be in the show notes. But in your words, I would love for you to just kind of give our listeners an idea of who you are and what you do and why you do it.
Oh, goodness. I am the CEO and co-founder of Movement Maker, which is a web design agency that is out of San Antonio. It was a very long and windy, twisted journey to get to this place. Um, but I feel like I'm standing in the role that I am just made for. A lot of that does have to do with understanding my core values and finally, instead of running from them or apologizing for them, finally embracing them. I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been married for almost 18 years. We have 4 kids. I have 2 teenagers in the house and 2 elementary kids still. So it's a very fun dynamic at home. When the teenagers are done with us, we still have the little 6 and 10-year-old that want to play with mom and dad still. So that helps. And I'm just a part of a very thriving community here in San Antonio of female business owners. But I really do try to surround myself with women like you, Andrea, and others, because it's a very unique path.
Mm,
And for the typical woman who's at this level of leadership and ownership of something like a business, at this level, you really don't have a lot of other women on either side of you that can relate to a lot of the stuff that you're doing or
mm,
understand the drive and the ambition and just wanting more for my life.
mm,
So that really inspires the work that I do. It inspires the work that I do because I think if I can continue to be successful in both my life circle and the work circle, then I get to be someone that another woman, looks
mm,
to and says, that's possible. I
mm,
can have that level of autonomy.
mm,
I can make that types of decisions and have that type of freedom. And Leslee 10 years ago, oh my goodness, would have given anything for
mm.
that. So that really drives what I do every day.
Yeah. And you just, you are one of those people that has kind of helped me define who my ideal client is because I think we all as business owners kind of go out there thinking, I'm going to work with these people. These are my people that I'm talking to. And I joke around on other people's podcasts that I thought I was going to go out there and talk to other women like me who were saying bye-bye to corporate and who were like in their mid to late 50s because they had a
Hmm.
second career. And what's happened is I have this passion for mentorship and this passion
Hmm.
for bringing along the next generation and training that generation to bring along the next generation. And in your story, you just shared that you have that exact passion. And so it turns out I end up working with a lot more women who are more in the millennial space.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So when Andrea and I first met via Polo,
Yeah.
um, she
And to
just
be
came
clear,
on.
hang on. Charity Medina is the one who introduced
Yes.
us, and she was on this podcast a while back, and she is her specialty is working genius. So if you want to hear the person that introduced us, who is also a core values alpha testing client,
Yes.
you can go back and listen to that episode about her. But anyway, she introduced us through like a co-polo or something, like a group polo.
She did. Yeah. A group polo. She was like, I think that you need to meet Leslee. You need to meet Andrea. And then Andrea, immediately, you just sent me a polo. And I think you were in the middle of leaving like a conference or I don't know what it was, but it was just this like Spitfire woman that was like, hello, Leslee. Yes, I'm on my way to do this. And we're talking. And I think maybe like one polo in, you're like, yes, I am a pastor's wife right now. We're Baptist, but I'm a social justice warrior and I'm against the patriarchy. And I was just like, because and that's all of us, right? We judge the little book by its cover. And so you look at Andrea and you're just like, oh, but she came out and I loved your honesty. And I was in that moment of my life, searching for someone that, did have a deep faith, because that was important to me. And we can get into my background in ministry, but I had left the world of ministry and kind of in this a little bit of a lost, like, okay,
Nomad.
how do
Called
I,
yourself a
yeah,
nomad.
a nomad, like I don't fit in anywhere. And I see this woman who's out there thriving and unapologetically saying these things that she now believes that in her denomination is probably not the most
Well,
widely accepted.
and to be clear, I was saying them to you at the time. I was not saying them to the public. And
Yes,
but
yes,
that was part of the working out, right? That was the beauty of the relationship because it was somebody that got it.
yes, yes. And so I was just like, oh no, if she's able to even say this to me, because at that time I was not able, even I couldn't even say it to like myself.
Mhm.
Um, I think that just thrusted us into this friendship and mentorship, because there was certainly a confidence in you and an assuredness in you that I really didn't have, as much as I wanted to portray that I did. And
Mhm.
that bio can go, pages and pages. What I was really living out as my reality internally was just a very confused, dealing with a lot of shame and guilt
Mhm.
and hiding from a
Yeah.
lot.
And I'm glad that you brought that up. My very last week's episode was all about deconstruction and how it is imperative in your personal growth, and that
Hmm.
you cannot have good personal growth without deconstruction. So this is the hypothesis I've put out there. Y'all can disagree with me if you want, um, because there's a lot of, and you and I just had this, and we can contribute a little bit more if we want and go into that a little further. The deconstruction that we're talking about was specifically in the faith space. And,
Hmm.
but that was where I learned that it was okay to do that. And then
Hmm.
I realized, oh, I need to deconstruct my ideas about social justice, or I can deconstruct my ideas about demographics or economics. That's kind of my thing right
Hmm.
now. And I mean, just kind of figuring out, where did I get these ideas, these
Yeah.
assumptions, beliefs, and conditioning that I've been willing to compromise my own core values for 50
Mm.
plus years. Where did they
Hmm.
come from and why did I buy into that? And it's so, people don't want to, a lot of times they don't want to do therapy because they think, well, I'm just blaming whoever. Well, coaching is, there's no blame in coaching. The only person that is responsible in a coaching relationship is the client. And
Hmm.
so, and you were taking, like, I was taking good, responsibility for that. And you saw that in me and it gave you the courage to do that. So when we met, it was really more, we were, I think, surprised because Charity never said anything about either of us
No,
coming from a spiritual
no.
space. She just
Uh-uh.
said, you're both businesswomen, you just both
Yeah.
do Marco Polo. And we just started
Yeah.
talking honestly. And so I do want to put a plug in for this idea that finding people that you can have good, honest conversations with, that are transparent, that you can kind of open the outer coat and show the clothing underneath, and be
Hmm.
willing to say, this is who I really am. You need those relationships in your life, even if you're in Virginia or and Texas.
Yeah.
And even when you go to Texas and you still can't meet up. I mean,
I
it just
know.
like
It's so sad.
it just I just need people to hear that relationships like this, even though you did become a client, it's still this close mentor sisterhood type relationship that started because we were willing to have a conversation.
Yeah.
So those things, when we met, tell me a little bit more about exactly where you were when we met, and kind of the things that you were struggling with in the moment.
I think that's what when you talked about the deconstruction of ideas, values, and going along with a lot of them, but not ever questioning why.
Right.
I think that's where I found myself. There was just so many things that I was going along with, but for the first time, it just started feeling off, because we had stepped away from. So my husband and I were in ministry. He was in ministry for 18 years. I was in ministry for 13. And around 2020, both of us were exiting ministry and really just kind of taking a break with church in general. So we do some online stuff and church hop here and there. But for the most part, when you get out of that silo and you're now out, you can start like and stuff kind of settles, the debris and all the stuff that you went through kind
The
of
snow globe,
settles.
everything settles in the snow globe.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I don't know, you're able to hear more, or you're able to feel a little bit more because you're not around so much, in my own experience, a lot of groupthink.
Mm,
Everybody sends their kid to this school. Everybody goes in vacations here. Everybody goes to this conference. Everybody, and so you're not around everybody anymore. In fact, for us and in our story, nobody came to check on us. Nobody reached out. Nobody wanted to see how we were doing. It were the people that had left before us. They were the ones that reached out and asked how we were doing because they had been through it.
mm,
So you start to just being like, wait, then what was I living? Like, what was that all about? If the people that I thought were my tried and true and my community, the body of Christ, like if they're nowhere to be found during one of the hardest times of our lives, then what was any of it about? And so that's, I think, where you found me, was feeling this deep questioning and unsettledness, not knowing what to do with it, frankly, being afraid of it.
hmm
Oh, and I think we had so many, it gives me chills just thinking about it. We had so many conversations between you and I about the fear of going there,
hmm
the fear of even voicing these doubts and these questions. And so before you, it was, I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just going to immerse myself in business. I'm going to immerse myself into this other vehicle vehicle of purpose for me.
mm,
And I'm just going to pretend like the last 13 years didn't happen
mm.
because I just can't go there. And so that's where you and I found each other. And so when you were so open with these ideas, and I was just like, wait, you're allowed to, you can say that. So you just gave me this space to like, well, this is what I think about prayer now. Like, just being
hmm
able to put it all out there. And it was tough. It was very tough. You saw very vulnerable, weepy polos of me in my car, just being like, I don't know what I'm doing. Um, but it's almost like that, all of that needed to come up in order to prepare me for even the core values work. Because even
Yeah.
though you and I met, it was a while before we
hmm
even stepped into core values. And I think that was there was just a very, yeah, there was reasons for that. I don't think I could have inserted or tried to discover my personal core values in the midst of so much confusion
hmm
with what was going on inside.
Yeah. I mean, there were some layers that needed to come off. Right.
Hmm.
Sometimes, and if you go back to last week's episode, anybody who's listening, I talk about taking off all the layers. And there was some movie where I don't, and I think I literally said it this way in my last episode because I still didn't go look for what the movie is, but it's a movie in which somebody has to be somewhere and they put on like all their clothes because they don't have a suitcase. And so literally all their clothes are on top of them and they look like a big snowman or something. But then when they get there, they take all their clothes off. And so again, if you can figure out what that one is, maybe it's just a vision I have in my head. But when we start doing that, everything becomes lighter. Everything becomes, even if you don't know your core values yet,
Hmm.
when you decide I am not going to accept everything that I have just assumed all of my life, it
Hmm.
doesn't have to be in a spiritual sense. If y'all are listening to
Yep.
this and you're
Yep.
like, I never went to church, why are you talking about this? That's fine. We all have assumptions and beliefs and conditioning. Ours just happen to be in the same place. And
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that you have to do it there because it may be that you don't have any of these questions, even if you did grow up in the church. But
Yeah.
Leslie and I did, and that just happened to be the point that we connected on. And being willing to say, what is it in my life that is holding me back? What is it in
Hmm.
my life that is a contradiction that I don't know what to do with? Like you said,
Hmm.
you would like put your hands over your face and say, I don't really know what to do here because
Yeah.
I know this is true and that is true. How is that possible that they are both true? Well, maybe it's not. I mean, there are times when there are both and, but a lot of
Hmm.
times there are things that we have believed for a really long time or just assumed, and we have to let go of them. And when we talk about integrating we talk about doing core values work. If you haven't done some of that work first, it's really hard to get down there. So people
Mhm.
just need to know that doing core values work is a deconstruction process. And
Yeah. Hmm.
unless you've already done it, and I mean, I meet people, Leslie, who don't need to do, I mean,
Mm.
not everybody needs to do this work. But I meet people who can just go ahead and do the core values work because they didn't have to do a lot of that. But then they
Yeah.
find down the road there's other things because of the core values work that then they need to say, oh, I was always thinking this. Like I said, I'm personally in like the economics conversation for
Yes.
myself. Like I'm
Yes.
deconstructing all of my what I was taught from, you know, trickle down economics and before, because I graduated from high school in 84. So for me, that's like at the forefront of my mind. And that's been huge in the American economy for so long. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, but was it good? But
Mm.
was it right?
Mm.
And what does it mean? So that's really, I want people to understand, listeners especially, that it's not just in the spiritual realm or the faith realm, but for so many right now. And that's just a specialty of mine because I do consider myself a deconstructed, reconstructed Christian. And
Mhm.
I am a pastor's wife, and I don't see that going anywhere anytime soon. So, it's like that's an area that I function very well. So by the time you got through some of that stuff, you were already working through, like we were already starting to talk about, I remember talking about your business, because you
Uh-huh.
had like two businesses or three businesses. Tell me
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
how that started narrowing down.
Yeah. So I went out on my own. I had already had a side consulting business since 2016. And so when I fully went out on my own in 2021, it was for marketing consulting. But because I had such a passion for women, especially women that were looking to start their own businesses, because I strongly believe that serving the person that you once were
Yeah.
um, is so natural for many of us. And
Yeah.
so I kind of saw Leslie 10 years ago feeling stuck in the place that she was. And I was like, man, if all the stuff that I could create now existed for me back then, I think I would have left my ministry role a lot sooner than dragging it out for as long as
Mhm.
it was. So I had the marketing consulting and I had marketing clients. But then I also had the coaching. Like I started these coaching groups for startup female entrepreneurs that were very much like me. So they were mothers and juggling a lot. And I think that entrepreneurial journey is very unique, and you can't just read a business book and do it the way everybody else does it
Yeah.
because it just doesn't work. You can listen to business podcasts, but you're always going to be filtering for,
Mhm.
okay, how do I make sense of this as a mom that has, household responsibilities? And, you may be in a household where those are split equally, but the truth is, statistically, they're not.
Yeah.
And a lot of it still falls on the mom.
Mhm.
So these groups were kind of taking off. But then at the same time, my husband, who's been in web design, so when he left ministry, he started his own consulting and did that with churches and nonprofits. But then he'd been a web designer. Brett's been designing websites for like 20 years when he was in college. And so he was doing websites for these nonprofits and these different ministries. And so I was looking at what he was doing and just thought and asked him, what if I sold them? And he was
Mm.
like, well, what if you did? How many do you think you can sell? And I said, I don't know, like 3. Well, I ended up selling 5, and I sold them for way more than he was selling them because he's a pastor, and he's a pastor at heart forever.
Yeah.
And for Brett to charge someone that's doing like good work in the community is very hard for him. So I said, well, what would happen if we merged? And so he had created this web design, right, business called Movement Maker. And I was like, well, what if we merged? And I take all of my network and all the business, acumen that I have, and let's just see what we do with this. So I had the web design stuff going, I had the marketing consulting stuff going, and I had the coaching stuff going. And so you find me also with all these internal questions,
Mhm.
throwing myself into these things because I'm running from the hard questions. And I could just feel the compromises happening. And like,
Mm.
why does this still feel so difficult and so hard? Or why do I still feel, and I think the key thing was, why do I still feel so helpless?
Mm.
Like I literally own my own business and I still feel so helpless. And I'll never forget the conversation that we had on Polo. I think I was probably crying about something. And you sent it back to me and you said, Leslee, you have no idea how powerful you actually are. And I mean, I will remember that for the rest of my life as just this like shift because someone saw me as powerful and spoke that over me. And in the places and spaces that you and I came from,
Mm.
being women in ministry, you typically don't put
Yeah.
those two words together, women and power.
Power. Yes.
They don't get to go together.
Nope.
Men in power do, but
Yes.
women in power don't. And so my entire ministry career and I think that was with the tension that I was feeling even in business
Yeah.
was this belief that I'm not allowed to be powerful. So it's like me not really ever stepping into fully who I am and who I was because there was a belief in me that I wasn't allowed to.
Mm.
So when you said that to me and you were like, listen, this core values work that I do, that'll help you unlock this stuff and you won't ever be apologizing for things again. And I was just like, okay, sign me up. What? I'm done. I'm done walking through and living and apologizing and just feeling, like I said, very helpless. And I was extremely curious at what life could look like if I was walking in that power.
Mm. And I think gosh, thank you for the affirmation that, because I have a coach that I keep quoting, and a notification just came across my screen that she's back on Marco Polo. So, I'm going to go contact her. But um, I have a coach who said to me when I was going through deconstruction, Andrea, Jesus can hold on to you better than you can
Mm,
hold on to him. And that was the one thing
yes.
that I keep quoting to so many people. And I know I said it to you as
Yes.
well,
Yes.
but for you to be able to say to me, I love that affirmation because you are powerful. And we joked at the beginning of the show, it's like, oh my gosh, your bio is, and we know you're an Enneagram 3. And,
Hmm.
because that's just, there's a lot of power in that and a lot of achievement in that. And you just didn't have the permission
Hmm.
to be who God created you to be. And I could see that, or who you were created to be, who you were designed to be perfectly.
Hmm.
And so I remember I don't and y'all I am also from ministry background. So charging people is hard for me. And asking for
Yeah.
money is hard for me. And I can say it's not hard for me and we can all that. But in women, it's ingrained. In those who come from a
Hmm.
ministry background, it's ingrained that it's hard for us to ask for money. And so anybody listening, if you know now that it's hard for Andrea to ask for money, please, if you need my coaching, just ask for it.
Yes.
um, I'm happy if you want to pay for it, I'm happy to charge you. But for you to just say, well, what is it I'm in, right? Sold, right?
Hmm.
That was an affirmation to me as well, because I was testing out a new program. I had a core values course and I thought, I think I'd like to do some coaching here. And I had done it with one other person at the time. And you said, I'm in, right? So let's talk about how that went. We have about 30 minutes left here. Let's talk about what it was like to walk through that process, the things that you learned. I love that you started the program and the process on a personal business retreat. And
Hmm.
so let's kind of walk through a little bit of that and then get into how you've integrated it and what a difference it's made.
Yeah, so I really do try to take personal retreats every quarter, which is me, myself, and I by myself. And so it was great timing because I was up for another solo retreat. And you had told me to get a journal. You were like, get a journal that's only for this coursework. So I have it, and I only use it for the deep work stuff, not for work to-dos.
Yeah.
But the reason I was drawn to it, and I found it when I was on that trip, is because it says, listen to your inside voice.
Mm.
And when you grow up, basically, this may be kind of extreme, but there may be some women out there that believe it like this, the way that I did. Um, Sometimes our inside voice is villainized.
Hmm.
Like we can't even, no, no, no. Like you can't trust your heart.
Yep.
Your feelings, your emotions will lead you astray.
Yep.
You can only trust, in our context, you can only trust God's voice. And so having this journal, listen to your inside voice, was already a huge step towards understanding this powerful side of Leslie, because I was going to begin to trust myself in a way that I just couldn't. I just could not trust myself. So on this retreat, and I remember talking to you in our first session, because this retreat felt so different than all of my other ones. All my other ones were typically very emotional, or I felt like I was purging something, or like I had a big old revelation. And this one was just, it just wasn't that. And you helped me. And I think this was, again, why I was ready for core values, is because you said, well, maybe it's because you've done all of it. You've gotten everything out.
Mm. hmm
And now you're coming to this retreat, and the point of it is not to pour out. Now maybe it's time for you to be poured into, and for you to start taking something in. And so I was like, I never even thought of it that way. But the first part of the core values is just a major brain dump. Like, I mean, Andrea gives you a worksheet of, I don't know, over 100 possible core values, like words. And after she goes through in the course, and she kind of really helps you understand the difference between like a core value, or just like a personal principle that you have in your life. And so I think that was a very good distinction of those. So I wrote notes like they're your driving force behind what you do. Values help you make decisions. They help you establish boundaries, both internally and externally. So this was, again, very in line with what I was looking towards. And I think I ended in, so you said, circle any and all core values that you resonate with. And so I think I end up having like 30 here or
That's
something. And
all
some of the,
normal. Yeah.
like, it was a lot. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay. And she was like, it should be a lot. I think you call it like everything in the kitchen sink, right?
Yeah.
Didn't
Yeah.
you say, isn't that what it's called? Yeah. Well, that's what it was. And so I had like being the best, ambition, clarity, confidence, delight, freedom, flow, growth, power, presence. And so obviously there was a lot of themes around growth and empowerment.
Mm.
Autonomy was one. And yeah, from there, you were like, pick, what did you say? Pick five,
10.
maybe?
Pick 10.
Oh,
Yeah, pick 10. And for those of you listening to, if you do the free core values exercise, it walks you through this in a very, very succinct, small way, and you don't get the big list of words. But if you just do the download on my website, you get the same process. It's just kind of truncated.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think because I had such time set aside, I think I was actually able to get it down to five.
Yeah, you
Let's see,
powered
one,
through,
two,
but you were by
three,
yourself.
four. I was by myself. And
Yeah.
so so I ended up landing with dreaming, power, growth, empowerment, and resilience is what it ended up being.
So
And
let's talk about go ahead. Go
and I
ahead.
was just gonna say, and you were so, you were like, I'm telling you right now that the five that you have will likely not be the three that you end up with. And I was like, I don't understand that. These are really good.
Well, and let's talk about, because that's what you're describing there, that's the course, right?
Mhm.
So let's talk about how the coaching actually helped you see deeper than that. What did the coaching do
Mhm.
for you?
So doing this work and then being able to jump on, an hour and a half call with you, it was this like, I'm not gonna, it wasn't it was challenging, because it was like, okay, you're saying that dreaming is a possible core value for you. Why? And so then I would have like a story that I put with it, and you're like, all right, is that a core value, or is that a result of one of your core values? And I was like, oh, I don't know now. And she was like, and then you were like, and if it's a result of one of your core values, then what would be the inspiration? Like, why drive the dreaming? Like, what's driving the dreaming? And so then I had to like go and do another layer of that. Same thing with like the power. Like, there was a lot of themes of like power, autonomy, freedom. And in my own life, I had just been in so many environments where I wasn't able to make decisions.
Mhm.
And I really wanted to, but I had people in my life that made them for me, or made me feel wrong for wanting to make those decisions. And so it was almost like I was writing down core values that were not
Aspirational.
yeah, it was kind of like I have all the power in the world. I That's what I want. And I think it was kind of speaking more to maybe that pain and that hurt that I
Mhm.
had experienced in those environments. But as we kept digging, it was like, but you do have the reality is, Leslie, you do have the ability and the autonomy to make these decisions.
Mhm.
So is that really what the core value is? And so like, okay, I don't. And so it was a lot of posing things and digging through them. And then one of my favorite things that I ask myself even now, when was that core value dishonored? Give me an example of when power was dishonored. And that was why with dreaming, that's when we determined that dreaming probably wasn't a core value because you said, give me an example when dreaming was dishonored. And I'm like, well, maybe my idea didn't go through and they took my idea or whatever. She goes, and you said, but you still dream. Like nothing's stopping you from dreaming. And I was like, oh, that's true. So I love that question because that question
Yeah.
helped filter so much.
It does. And there are times, I mean, I still ask that. That's a standard question, right? It's like, and what you're describing is standard coaching, right? It's just, but I specialize in this area, helping people to look below the surface, to look at things, because we are so part of beliefs and condition assumptions, ABCs, is that everything must be outside, everything must be outward facing, and it must have an outward result,
Hmm.
and it must have some kind of an outward manifestation. And it doesn't always. A
Hmm.
lot of times it's like you said, you wrote down at the very beginning, it's an inward motivation. And
Yeah.
for people to take the time in this world, in this outward facing, everything is outward facing world, to take the time to actually stop and look inside and say, hang on, why is it that dreaming is so important to me? Oh, well, it's because of this. Or
Hmm.
like I just had a workshop where a gentleman said his top core value turned out to be resilience. And I said, it didn't even dawn on me not to coach in the moment. I just said, so tell me about that. Tell me a story. And that, when somebody asks you to do those things, that really kind of kicks your brain into thinking about it in a new way, right? So I
Hmm.
said, tell me a story about that. And then I said, so do you think resilience in your case was developed and learned, or do you think it's innate? And he goes, what do you mean?
Mm.
And so I said, well, then tell me another story. And when he started telling me stories, I said, it sounds like that's something that you learned how to do. And it sounds like dreaming for you was, and there was other things that we went through that you didn't actually share a minute ago, but there were other questions that I could ask. Well, how is that? Um, how is that something that you learned or is a result of
Hmm.
acting on or trying to protect a core value? And
Mm-hmm.
we are not taught to do that in
Yeah.
in our world today. We are taught to behave in certain ways, to act in certain ways, and then of course the other end of the spectrum is true, which gets all the pushback. It's like we're told to either comply over here or defy everything over here and be your own self and
Hmm.
choose absolutely everything. It's like I think there's some place in the middle that's actually real.
Yes.
And so when you did that process, and when I asked that gentleman that question, he goes, "Oh, I never thought about it that way." And he was able in the moment to say, "I think it's more of a acceptance, or because of his situation, he one of the reasons he was resilient is because he liked peace." Right. So he
Mm.
wanted to bounce back from things quickly so when we start looking at stuff like that, it changes the lens through which we see our lives.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
tell me a little bit about, actually, can you tell us your top three core values?
Yes.
Okay.
So my top three are strategic, influence, and validation.
And can you give us definitions for those? Because that's one of the things we
Uh,
walk through too. And you were actually
yes.
really instrumental in helping me with a new process. Like this was an alpha testing program. So I realized, oh, I needed more than 4 meetings with you. I needed 6.
Yes.
And then I needed to integrate, and I don't know if you've done it or not, some kind of visual representation for my clients to help
Mm.
them do it. I
Hmm.
think you did, or maybe you didn't, but you were the one that came up with the Chat GPT stuff. Because I said, why don't you Google stuff? And you said, well, I went to Chat GPT. So tell us a little bit about the definitions for yours and how you got there.
Yeah. So I think I was kind of going in between the five, and so I went to chat and I was like, all right, it this because really you were asking me, what does it look like to live in this core value and not?
Yeah.
And so I basically asked chat that. I was like, what does it look like to live strategically? What does it look like to live without, not strategically? And so I kind of really just leaned into the areas of what it feels like to what it feels like to not live in that core value. And the ones that were really just like, oh God, I can't even
It
imagine.
rose
Those
to
were
the
the ones that
top.
I know that I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, and so to live strategically is I have the ability to talk about the who and the what. Like I need to be at the table and being instrumental with the who and the what in my life. I'm obviously very visionary, and so I see things. And so when I'm able to strategically bring that vision to whether it's in my life space or in the business space, I'm thriving.
Mm,
When I'm in environments that dishonor strategy for me, typically those are environments that are very chaotic.
mm.
They don't have the capacity to take on that level of strategy. Say we're doing one thing this week, and then next week we're actually doing this. I can't.
Mhm.
So that feels like, oof, I can't be in that environment. So that was how I knew that one.
Can you share an
Go
example? Like you shared with me not long after that, you went to a meeting and you said, "Oh
Yes.
my gosh, for the first time I'm seeing why I'm frustrated in this meeting." Tell me what that revelation was.
And for the first time, I actually spoke up and said something about it. So we have a business association here in San Antonio, and they had a specific program for businesses that were in their scaling phase. And I was really excited about being, with my peers and handling complex challenges that were a little bit more than those that are in the startup phase. But there were some meetings where one person that probably didn't qualify as in the scale up phase was just really dominating the conversation. And so, I mean, it's like an hour, maybe an hour and a half meeting, and she probably took up about a good 45 minutes with her updates. I could feel myself just getting really frustrated because I had made it very clear. Like they went around, Leslie, what do you want to get out of the meeting today? And I said, I'd love to go through financial forecasting and I want to know how to do that. And so we got to this other person and she just derailed the entire conversation and had done that a number of times. So I left, but I was like, why am I so frustrated about this? Like, this just, and I immediately, it clicked. And I was
Mm,
like, your strategic core value was being dishonored.
mhm.
You had no ability to be able to talk about who and what, and you were just kind of at the beck and call of whatever kind of chaos was going on with this one person's situation. But what really proved to me that this core value thing was unleashing the power side, right? Is because I did something about it.
Mm,
I would have been like, "Oh, well, that really stinks and I'm frustrated." Okay. And
bummer.
I would have had that resentment and like built that up. But I reached out to the program coordinators and in a really professional way gave feedback and
Mm,
said, hey, there's so much potential here. I've loved getting to know my peers in this space. This area was frustrating.
mm.
And it's something that I'd like to be considered in the next time that we're doing this program. And they were completely receptive to it. And I walked away like, huh, I guess I can
Mm,
raise my voice
mm,
and talk about something that I didn't like
mhm.
because my past and what I believed was I was not allowed to do that.
Well, but you didn't do it in a way that was rude. You didn't do it in a way that
Hmm.
dishonored the other person. And this is
Hmm.
what we talk about a lot in core values. It's like you don't honor your own core values by dishonoring someone else's. And you have no
Hmm.
idea what that person was going through, what their core values
Yes.
are. And it may be that there just needed to be a higher level of leadership in that particular situation. But being willing to handle it in a way that was professional, that was in within the chain of command, shall we say, it was a way that honored everyone. Nobody had to be dishonored in that moment. And I keep using that word
Hmm.
over and over. I'm gonna have to like examine whether or not honor is one of my core values. But
Yeah.
because we all continue to do our own work, right? That may be where authenticity is going for me is honor. But okay, so influence, what is the definition there?
Influence is really about leadership for me. So if I'm going to have a seat at the table and say the who and the what, then it's really important for me to have enough influence to see that vision carried out. For people to kind of galvanize around a thought or an idea, and together we're aiming towards that. And so when that is dishonored, is again, if I'm bringing these ideas to the table, but because of a chaotic environment, oh, great, Leslie, that's wonderful. And then the next day or the next month, we're literally talking about the same thing
Mhm.
because no one's able to do anything with it,
Mm.
then it's clear that my influence is just it's not effective there. And so that's something that's really important to me. And then finally, which this one, you and I, the validation, you and I did some pretty deep diving on this because of my ministry background, and the fact that I was saying validation was a core value felt like, oh my gosh, why do you need to be validated? Shouldn't you have that enough, through your faith? And
Mhm.
isn't that a very self-centered thing? And so we really had to deconstruct what all of that was about, and how, yes, I do have personal validation, but it is important for me. For another example, I was invited to speak to a group of women startups, and I'm talking all about branding. And so, in this conversation, as I'm talking about branding, there is one person who she keeps raising her hand on Zoom, but she's not asking any questions. She's teaching the group her own version of branding.
Mm.
And so as I was going through that, I started feeling like that, like, oh, why is that bothering me? Well, it felt very invalidating in that I was asked to be the speaker. And although I'm happy to share the floor with other insights and opinions, it felt like there was a sense of, hey, I know a lot about this, and so I'm going to make it a point to kind of
I'm
make
going to
a
co-teach.
I'm going to co-teach. Let's
Yeah.
co-teach this. And so that didn't feel very validating for what was asked of me. And I think I brought that situation to you, and you helped me understand that.
Yeah. And I think that what I want people to hear you saying is that none of this is about, I mean, yes, it all relates back to that whole idea of you actually are more powerful than you think. But
Hmm.
these things that you're saying are core values for you, and it may be 10 years from now, if you continue to do this work, that strategic will be even further niched down and more
Mm,
specific, or influence might as well, and so will validation. But to understand that you don't necessarily, and that part of the work that we did was you don't necessarily need validation from the outside,
yeah.
but knowing where to find that is incredibly important. Being able to honor and say, I am valid, whether or not anybody wants to co-teach with me. I mean, you could have just never unmuted her. Um,
Hmm.
and that would not have been necessarily a nice thing to do. It's probably something
Yeah.
I would have done. But, I mean, it's just to hear the way that you've handled even the understanding of where your core values are being dishonored, you're handling them in a gracious way. And that's one more piece I want people to hear is that the way that we're starting and have been able to integrate them is looking for where they're dishonored. It's,
Hmm.
people want to say, well, this is something that I really love. And it's like, that's awesome. What ticks you off? Right? Because
Hmm.
we're not going to find our core values as quickly looking at the things that bring us joy. While they do bring us joy, while being able to be in an environment, family, business, whatever, for you, where you get to see the strategy taking place and you get to kind of be a part of, I mean, the name of the business. I can't believe you didn't name it Movement Makers.
Yeah.
It's like, I can't believe you didn't name that and start the company, right? It just fits so perfectly with who you are.
Hmm.
And being able to say, these are the things that really bother me. Why?
Hmm.
Not just get angry, ask why, right? And that's the
Yep.
curiosity factor that is so important in this work.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
did you have something else there or?
Well, I was just going to say, asking the curiosity, asking the question, and not allowing shame to
Mhm.
silence the exploration of it. And I think that's what having you on the other side, because I mean, you certainly could just do the course, but I think what the coaching allows for is that very needed processing,
Yeah.
aloud. And I just don't think people do that very well on their own. Um, and so having you on the other side for me to voice, hey, this was really frustrating for me.
Hmm.
You could kind of ask those questions and draw out. And there wasn't judgment. Also, it wasn't like, Leslie, give other people a chance to speak. It's okay. It was like, hey, I could see how that's frustrating. Let's talk about it. What do you think? What core value do you think
Hmm.
that was pushing on? So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was very helpful.
Good. Because that's what we want to do here for each other. Even if we're not in a client relationship, this is how we help each other grow. In, the biblical language, this is how iron sharpens iron, right? This is
Hmm.
we a lot of times hear iron sharpens iron as like conflict, and that's not what it means. It means this kind of thing where we ask each other why questions and we get curious. And I love that statement. Be curious and don't allow shame to silence the voicing of your curiosity. I think that's
Yeah.
really important to hear. So
Hmm.
the last piece of all of this is not just understanding them, but you have to do something with them. Tell
Hmm.
me how this has completely changed, because I'm just going to throw that out there. I think this has completely changed your business. It has completely changed your life. Tell me how
Hmm.
that's happened. Tell me how you've integrated.
Well, like I mentioned, I kind of had three kind of businesses going on at the same time. And now being fully aware of my core values and knowing that I, my life is more in alignment and I live more authentically when I live out of my core values. I was in the middle of another group coaching launch, in the middle of it. I mean, I had already promoted it, I was talking about it, I was doing speaking events and telling people to sign up. And there was a pit in my stomach
Mm,
every step of the way that I was in denial about. And I was like, no, 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 this will be fine. And it was another group coaching of female startups. It would have been 13 weeks, all on Marco Polo, and I'm walking them through like basically either they're launching their business or helping them in that specific phase. But there was just something about it that I was like, oh, because the other thing that was going on simultaneously is me sitting at executive tables talking about revenue generation and complex marketing strategy with CEOs and really informing them that their website is the hub to all of their marketing strategy. And I'm at that table and I'm just like, this is fascinating. Like, this is just so exciting. Oh my gosh, I get to work with this company and they're doing this much. Um, and there was certainly a comfort about the coaching.
mm,
I knew I could do it. Um, I think when I started coaching, it certainly served the validation part, but
mm,
I think I needed, that's when I was still seeking a lot of external validation.
mm-hmm.
So to have women tell you, "Oh my goodness, Leslie, I don't even know what I would do without you. My business is where it is because of you." Like that helped this very lost, nomadic, searching woman on the inside who needed that at the
Mm,
time. After going through the coaching, there was just again more of that confidence and that power in that I am validated because of who I am. So I have these two good things in front of me. And it was time for another personal retreat.
mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting by myself with this big decision, which is, do I shut down the coaching in the middle of a launch to completely 100% give all of my energy and effort and focus to the web design agency? And I knew that I'd be letting people down. I mean, I had an entire team building
Mm-hmm.
promotional graphics. I mean, all the back end coaching stuff that needed to happen. And I decided, yes, I was going to do that because I would be lying to myself. I knew if I returned back from that trip and I continued with this launch, I would be lying to myself. And I could not no longer walk in that pit of my stomach feeling that I had come accustomed to years before, but now, no. Now that's my indicator that, Leslie, you're not living authentically. So
Mhm.
came back. It was extremely humbling. Had to
Mm,
make a very public communication of I'm no longer doing this.
mm,
Had to let my team know that I was going in a completely different direction. And I am now full on with Movement Maker, but I'm able to bring my full self
Hmm.
and live out my core values because I can live them out. I see all the ways that I can doing this work. And so it was a radical change, a radical change. But then not only that, as far as like business success, um, I mean, one coaching group launch is equal to like one website. And we're
Mm.
selling a lot of websites
Hmm.
and at a much frequent pace than I would have been with one coaching group that then the work just begins because now I'm 13 weeks,
Yeah.
walking alongside these women. So, I mean, just financially and hitting our revenue goals for the agency, it's just phenomenal. Being able to add to the team and growing the team already. I
Mm.
mean, that's just something that probably wouldn't have been a reality if I had tried to do both at the same time.
Mhm. Well, and some of you might be listening and saying, oh, that's just good business sense, right? I mean, Alex Hormozy came out with a podcast last week that said, you're trying to do too many things at once. And I'm like, well, yeah, I am. Okay, so I'll cut that out. But this was not a business decision. This was something based on asking, who is Leslie and where should
Hmm.
Leslie show up? And being able
Hmm.
to say, yeah, that did actually honor that validation piece for me for a while, or it felt like it honored. And that's something else we can talk about at another time. But there's a way that we can get the feeling of being honored when we're
Hmm.
not. It's almost addiction like. And so we pursue those things. But now, then when you stepped in, I'll never forget, you had this meeting with a coach and with your husband, and you're like, can I just be the CEO? And can you just do the web design? I don't need you
Yes.
in this meeting. And I remember thinking, oh, she is really taking the reins. And it was just so fun to
Yes.
watch, to see you just kind of step into yourself.
Yes. Yeah. No, that was my husband and I did a life planning with a life planning coach out in LA. And at the very last day, um, I was able to sit there and he's always asking like, hey, what reflections, what are you getting? And so after 2 days worth of a lot of work in, looking at our past, naming these chapters in our lives, where we want to go moving forward, I was able to confidently say, like, look at Brett and say, I want to lead this. And even though it sounds a little like, I can't believe you said that, but I looked at him and I said, I don't need you.
I thought about it
And
when you told me that. I was like, she said what?
I know. When it came out of my
But it's the
mouth, I was
confidence,
like,
right?
how did I
Yeah.
say that? But again, in the context that I came from,
Mm.
you don't do anything without,
The husband's
the
permission. Yeah. Mhm.
permission from your husband. And now it was like we're partners.
Yeah.
I'm not in a marriage that I'm kind of dotally following along someone with my eyes closed.
Hmm.
I'm in a beautiful partnership with
Mm.
a man that allows space for me to
Mm.
be all that I am, that I'm called to be, and
Mm.
vice versa.
Yeah.
And Brett is an incredible designer, but I also know that Brett has so much in him that he aspires to be, and it probably isn't going to involve web design for the rest
Mhm.
of his life. And I'm never going to hold him hostage. Oh, well,
Yeah.
you have to. You have to be here. I mean, we regularly talk about, okay, hey, what's the timeline? 1 more year, 2 more years? What does this look like for you? But that was a huge statement that came out of my mouth that I told you about. And yeah, we were both like, whoa, whoa.
Well, but I think what I'm hearing is that you've integrated core values not just into your business, but into your life. And it is allowing you to be the wife that you'd like to be, the partner that you'd like to be, the mom that you'd like to be, because it affects your parenting. And you're
Hmm.
showing your kids what it's like to honor yourself. Because you were one of my first clients who said, oh my gosh, I've been the worst person. I'm the one who's dishonored my core values more than anybody else.
Yes.
So you were like the first one that really said that to me. But it also is allowing you to show other business women and other people that they can do this too, and that it's all possible. So I know you need to go, and before we close this out here, do you have any last piece of advice that you'd like to give to our listeners?
I, you know, there's so much, especially in the world of business and women in business, there is just so many things that you could do, right? You get a business coach, get this personality test, do this assessment. Um, and I think we underestimate core values significantly.
Yeah.
I think it's a phrase, it's a word that you've probably heard your entire life. When you think about business and you think about your business's values, you're probably like, okay, yeah, let's put some words. So my encouragement to women listening is this is like foundational. Like if you want to see success and you don't want to a ceiling, because that's what will happen is you're going to do all the things that you've done before, and you probably have a lot of women that are very high achievers,
Mm-hmm.
like me, that overwork and overfunction, and but that also means that they get a lot of stuff done on their
Mm-hmm.
own and in their own ability, but you will eventually come to a ceiling that you will not be able to break through unless you reestablish this idea of connection with yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have no idea who you are, and that was me, if you don't know who you are, know how to voice, because your voice, like I said, in the past was made to be like this villain, like, oh no, you don't trust yourself, then you're never going to be able to break through to that next level. And so I'm living a next level life because of the foundational work of core values.
Mm-hmm.
And so now everything else that I do on top of that, and I've done, a number of assessments here and there, and I'm a part of a different, many different business associations and masterminds. But all of that is far more effective
Yeah.
because of the core values. Because otherwise, you're just kind of trying to paint, a really pretty picture on top of something that is just in chaos.
Mm.
And it'll never go as far as you want it to go. So I cannot recommend enough the core values work. And if you're on the fence before, you should literally just do it. Just do it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you. You know, I love you. We have to do more in person together. And I just am find it such a privilege to have been able to get you to this place and help you find that foundation. So thank you so much. I just loved having you here. It was a fabulous conversation.
Oh, same. It was so good.